Humanity Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining today. I'm your host, Rebecca Sparacio. This is a podcast of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. On today's episode on Inheriting Memory on hmTV, my special guest, Tamara Healy, will join me for a conversation about being a third-generation Holocaust survivor. So we're going to start with a series of questions, and we're going to start right now. So, Tamara, what was it like growing up as the child of a second-generation Holocaust survivor?
I think growing up, the history of it was always super important. My parents had sent me to Salman Schechter, which is a yeshiva school. And I went there for most of my schooling, from like kindergarten till 8th grade. And like learning Hebrew and Jewish history was like a part of my daily life there. I mean, we prayed for several periods a day. It was always super important. I don't think I understood the importance though till later on. They had us, I remember one of the assignments in Salman Schechter was to interview your grandparent about the Holocaust, because most of us did have a grandparent that was a survivor. So I remember interviewing him and asking questions, and it was always, I knew it was there, I knew the history was important, but I don't think it has hit me as hard as it has like as an adult now.
Was there a moment that you realized that your family was different from other families?
Yes, I would say when I left Salman Schechter. I left Salman Schechter after 8th grade, and I went to Bayshore High School, which is a very large, very diverse public school on Long Island. I had come from yeshiva where I graduated with 12 kids, okay? 12 kids were in my grade. We were all Jewish. We were all bar and bat mitzvahed. We all had survivors in our family. We were all dealing with the same intergenerational trauma that I wasn't even aware of. And then I go to Bayshore High School where, you know, this huge diverse population where I was the odd man out. People would point that out a lot. And I think that's when it hit me that I was different. They would introduce me as the Jew to other people. I had students hold up swastikas to me in class. People would make, even like my close friends would make jokes like, what do you like, bagels and lox? Do you like bagels and lox because you're Jewish? Like stuff like that. Obviously, I still have some very close friends that would never do that, but I don't think their intention was ever ill or to be mean. It was just not educated, not exposed. I don't know what it was, but definitely high school is when I realized that we are looked at as different sometimes, and that I face just that judgment that I didn't know really existed because I was in that bubble.
When those things happened to you, did you go to your parents or grandparents?
Yes. I don't think I went to my grandparents if I'm looking back on it. I remember feeling, I grew up, going back to your first question, I think growing up, there was such a pride in being Jewish. There really was. I didn't realize there was anything to be ashamed of, and not that there is, but I didn't realize that there was even a real judgment out there. So when it happened in high school, I mean, I was so proud. I was wearing like a Jewish star necklace. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. So I remember when someone held up the swastika to me, I like stood up. I was so upset. I went right to speak with administration, and they handled it. And I remember the girl crying and trying to hug me, and they suspended her. And yeah, I definitely spoke to my parents about it and not my grandparents. I don't know why.
Well, I'm glad that they handled it like that.
Yeah.
That there was a consequence for that type of behavior.
There definitely was. Yeah. And a lot of like ignorance to it too, where they didn't really understand the symbol. I mean, they knew what it was. They knew it was hurtful, but I don't think they understood the gravity to it.
Yeah. There is a lot of ignorance surrounding it, which is why Holocaust education is so important.
It's so important, yes. The history, I mean, it's not like we're learning about something from like BC, right? This happened not so long ago. We still have survivors alive. We still have, you know, my family specifically could be so much larger. We could have done so much more with the world if there was more of us. Mm-hmm. And it really hits. Like my dad didn't even have grandparents. Like, what is that like?
Let's get back a little bit to your upbringing. How did your parents' upbringing under their own survivor parents shape their own parenting styles. Did you notice that there is any humor, hypervigilance, an emphasis on gratitude or anxiety in your household?
A huge emphasis on gratitude. Like, you had to be so grateful, and more specifically, not braggy. I remember growing up, just a huge emphasis on that. I feel like I grew up very blessed, but almost had to keep it like, not that I would ever brag about it, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it much. Bragging was looked down upon a lot. You should be very grateful for what you have and not compare to other people. I think there was also humor to it. My dad always tried to bring humor into everything, which was very helpful, and I think it has come into my life now. Like, I definitely look in the humor for things. I think that's how I deal with a lot of stuff. But family specifically was super important to us. It was expressed through action. So it was like feeding, showing up, worrying, sacrificing. That was a huge thing that that was in my upbringing. My grandparents, actually, my dad's parents, lived not too far from us when they moved from Brooklyn. Because my grandmother got sick, they moved maybe like a town over, and every Shabbat we would go there. And even as I got older, I made sure to see them once or twice a week. Like, even as a high schooler, like, going there it didn't feel like a sacrifice, but it was so important. I needed to show up for them.
Did your parents openly discuss the Holocaust, or was it mostly with silence or occasional flashes of the story being mentioned or told?
Yeah, it wasn't talked about so much. My grandfather specifically didn't love to talk about it. I had talked as he got older. Towards the end, he definitely wanted us to talk more and ask more about it, which was different than I had remembered. My parents talked about it to a certain extent, but I don't think they ever sat down and were like, here is the story. I knew I would hear like bits and pieces, and I kind of was piecing it together as I grew older. You know, he was 9, he was in a forest. That's like the gist that I knew of. Okay. I knew he wasn't in a concentration camp. He had a different experience, and I knew his whole family had been murdered, but I didn't know like the story, like how my dad is sharing it in high schools now.
And did you feel that not knowing the full story had an impact over you?
No, I think I knew pretty much the gist of the story. So it's not like there were huge holes. I think I was always just more curious to know like the really nitty-gritty details. Like, I remember asking my grandfather one time, because I didn't know. I was just like, he was 9, right? His whole family was marched into the forest and murdered. He was 9 years old. So I remember asking him, like, did you cry? Were you crying? And he said no, he couldn't, because he was so frozen with survival, I guess, is where his mindset was at. It was probably like shock, not reality.
And you mentioned that your grandpa wanted to tell more of the story and speak more about it as he got older.
Yeah.
Would you sit down with him often and have conversations about it with him?
For sure. That's like when I would ask him, did you cry? Like, as I was getting older, I was getting more curious, and I would ask him, and he was definitely open to talking about it.
And what kind of things did he tell you when you asked him? What parts of his story did he tell?
He didn't tell me so much about the survival part. There were some parts he told me about, like hiding in a home that took him in, and then the house was burnt down after when they found out they were hiding him. So there's like trauma there. But a lot of what he told me was his after the post-Holocaust of him going to Israel and like trying to start over there. And that was a beautiful piece of the story that I think, gets overlooked or it's part of his survival story. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what did he say about going to Israel? What were the feelings that were associated with it?
So I think, again, it was like survival mode. Like, here is the next step, the next phase. He kind of had to start a life for himself and a career, and he was so young. So, and also because Israel was just starting to be a country, he had to fight for it too. So he was a soldier, he was trying to start a career. It was like a lot. I'm sure he finished schooling there too, and I think he stayed with an aunt. One aunt was all he had left, and I think he was with her. And I think he was always craving that like motherly piece, that family. He married pretty young. So that's it. It was just, a beautiful story after.
So you mentioned he was craving that motherly piece.
Yes.
Because I guess his mother sadly perished in the Holocaust. And your father grew up without grandparents and without his grandmother. Do you feel that like a sentiment like that was reflected in your house often, like the sadness surrounding that?
No, I don't think specifically to that. I think the mother figure was super important, and maybe that's it. I just never made the connections. But my grandmother played a very motherly role to my grandfather. She like always protected him. He could say no wrong, even if what he was saying was wrong. And like she knew he didn't really love to talk about the Holocaust, so she would say, he doesn't really like to talk about it, with their thick European accents. But she played a very motherly role, and I think, my dad and his parents, but specifically with his mom, had a very strong connection. I think the mother figure was always very important. She was the glue to our family, to traditions, to the food we ate. So, yeah, I guess it was always there. I just didn't really notice.
And was your grandma also a survivor of the Holocaust?
Yes, she was a survivor too. She was not in a concentration camp either. I think they were escaping. She was with her siblings and her mom on a train. They were trying to get out. And the mom hopped off the train at one of the stops, I think, to get them food or something. I need to clarify this story. But she got off and the train left without her, all of her kids. And she lost all of them. And they went into an orphanage. And I think she was pretending, or their identity of being Jewish was not out there. So they were in this orphanage as non-Jews, not practicing Jews, so they were safe there. And her mom years later found all of them. I don't know how she did it, but she found all of her kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. She has a very sad, crazy story too. And my grandfather would try and protect her. He would always say, "Oh, your grandma had such a hard upbringing. Her story's so sad." Like he would never, ever say, I don't know. He just, I felt, was more protective over her versus what he went through as well. Always what she went through was worse than him for some reason.
And would you speak to her about her story?
Yeah, I did. I wish I wrote it down. I wish there was recordings of it because a lot of it is very muddled in my memory, and she passed away at like 74. So she was pretty young.
Yeah.
So I just have like bits and pieces. But I think that's our next mission, is to kind of piece together her story and get it down.
And how have you been working toward that?
Well, I haven't started yet. I have 2 very young boys at home and a full-time job, and it's been in the back of my mind. My dad is sharing my grandfather's story right now, and eventually I want to like take that over and do that as well. But I think I'll join him with him and kind of piecing together and putting down her story, making sure it's factual and everything, but haven't started yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have a very busy life.
Very busy.
Yeah. So overall, how do you feel that you mentioned like the post-generational trauma that you weren't always aware of that you had? What is that like for you? And when did you realize you had moments of this post-generational trauma?
I think being a parent kind of wakes you up to trauma that you have or traditions or things part of you. But the humor, I find I'm always trying to bring in humor, a safety. Sometimes I'm always like waiting for the shoe to fall off. What is that? The left shoe? I forget what the saying is, but you're always like waiting for the shoe to drop. Like you're always trying to plan ahead for if something goes wrong. I think that part, a little anxiety is there. I noticed my grandfather had like a lot of rituals. I don't know if they were like OCD or like from the Holocaust, but he would do a lot of stuff before bed, like make sure the lights were all shut off. He would check all the doors. And when we would leave, he would like flash the lights on and off till like he couldn't see us anymore. Just a lot of ritualistic stuff. And I noticed sometimes I have some of that stuff too, like safety things. what else? I think family, to me, that is always carried over. Just being a priority, and tradition and food and Shabbat dinner and stuff like that, lighting the candles and all that I notice I have brought into parenthood. I don't think you realize the trauma you hold till you're a parent.
And have you told your kids of this story? Are they aware?
So my sons are 5 and 2.
Okay, so super
they're
young.
not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
My dad has a documentary, and it really shares the story of my grandfather, and I can't wait to show it to them. I feel so grateful that that is recorded and that we have that forever. And I can't wait to show them and talk to them about it when it's right. But I haven't quite started that very difficult journey of talking to them about it. Yeah.
So I guess we'll talk a little bit about confronting anti-Semitism and hate today. How has your family history influenced the way that you respond to anti-Semitism in the world today?
So I think it's so important how we respond to it now. I'm a school counselor too, so I see it in the schools, and I think it's so important how it's handled. I think it's important to keep the Holocaust separate from anything else. It's sacred. I really get defensive when it's compared to things because it's so different, and it's so, you don't want to take away from what it was.
Right.
So I think that's like a huge part in responding to today's anti-Semitism. And education. Education is a huge part. A lot of these kids I'll like have in my office because I meet with them for scheduling too. Like aside from social emotional stuff, I talk to them about their schedules, and we have a Holocaust class, and like I'm trying to get kids to enroll in this class, and I'll kind of share a little bit of my grandfather's story while I'm telling them about this class. And you could see in their faces a change when they just hear me talking about it for like, 5 minutes? It's like they're learning about the Holocaust in 10th grade, and like it's called global history. So they learn about it for such a tiny, minuscule amount of time that when even I'm bringing it up in this office, it seems foreign to them, like they didn't just learn this.
Right.
So I feel like something needs to be done there, and I know schools are trying and implementing yearly things, but the way we respond is very important, I think.
Yeah.
And it should be with education and with facts.
I agree. It's important that you tell them the story and try to enroll them in the class. I think it really will make a difference for the future.
It's hard to get kids to enroll in this class. I'm like, you want to take a fun class? Let me tell you about Holocaust. And they're like, no thanks.
Ever since October 7th has happened, there has been a spike in anti-Semitism. Have you felt a heightened sense of vigilance or urgency?
1,000,000%. I mean, I come here like very proud with my chai on my around my neck. But, you know, there are moments when I'm out where I don't feel comfortable wearing it. I think Zionism and Judaism, they are very intertwined, and there seems to be a very huge divide on that now. So, yeah, I've noticed it since October 7th. I think it's risen a lot, and I have a lot of family in Israel, so I don't know. It's just something that's been very difficult for me since October 7th. I noticed, I mean, that was a huge massacre, a huge attack in Israel, and not, you know, not to anyone's fault, but like we can't even acknowledge the date October 7th at my school. We can't mention it. It's not something that, you know, it's too political, and it upsets me because I don't think that that's political.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Especially since Israel is such an important part of your grandfather's story.
Yeah. I mean, it saved him.
It did. Is there something that you wish the public understood about October 7th or the Holocaust in general that you don't feel like is sinking in?
Such a good question. I think there's like so much to it, but I think what people don't realize when the Holocaust ended is that these people didn't have homes. They were displaced. people took over their homes. A lot of them were orphans, didn't have family anymore. These were displaced peoples. We were displaced from Europe. Me personally, in my heritage, I'm displaced from everywhere. I've been displaced from Europe. And I also have family from the Middle East that was displaced. We were also kicked out of Iraq. So I have Iraqi family and I have European family. We were kicked out of everywhere. So it's like what people are not realizing is like there were no homes. We were displaced people, and we already had a large portion of us were already in Israel. So it was like the natural. It's always been in our prayers and our blessings to be in Israel again. That's always been our home. It's literally in artifacts. It's in our most biblical prayers and writings. So when he went back to this home where he was finally safe, the country that took him in, it's a huge deal. It's our only country. Okay, there is only one Jewish country, and that's it. And it's so important for us and our safety, as I can see, as anti-Semitism is rising, it's even more apparent. So coming into Israel and this being our home, I can't even get into the politics of what I think people are getting jumbled up with apartheid and all that stuff, because that's a deeper conversation. But Israel is a beautiful country that accepts everyone from all walks of life and faith. And unless you've been there and seen it for yourself, which I have so many times, you really just don't understand what this little slice of heaven in the Middle East is. With Arabs, Muslims, Druze, Christians, and Jews living in one space, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It is. And what gives you hope that your story will continue to matter even without your grandparents still living?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm worried about, that it won't matter. I don't know how to make it more real for the next generation. I think it is obviously sharing these stories, but is that enough? I don't know. These are questions that I do think about often, is how can we still make this meaningful? How can kids still relate to it or understand that it wasn't that long ago, and that it can happen again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your message to listeners? What could they do now to stand against hatred and preserve the historical truth of what's happened to the Jews?
I think the biggest thing is social media can be, there's so much propaganda out there, and just like checking anything that comes across your page, fact check, look it up, look up the image. I don't know, just facts are going to be super important. And just standing up against hate, not for hate, standing up against hate, and just treating everybody with respect, even if they have different opinions. Mm-hmm. And instead of arguing, instead of fighting, instead of singling people out, like meet them with a conversation and facts. That's it. And just love. Like everybody, we're all the same and we have different opinions, and that's okay.
Yeah, that is really an important message when there's so much anger and hatred in our society today.
Absolutely.
Well, I have one more closing question for you. If your grandparents could speak on this podcast today, what message would they want the world to hear?
I think just like treating everybody with love and respect. I think that's a huge thing, that they always treated everybody around them with love and respect. And I think that's what they would love to see for the world.
It's a beautiful message.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Inheriting Memory on hmTv. I appreciate Tamara for coming in and sharing some insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate you doing this. Yeah.
If you enjoyed exploring the information, history, and stories in today's conversation, be sure to check out our other podcast series on hmTv. Please subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time.